Well, hello, everybody. We are approaching the 4th of July, which is my absolute favorite holiday. And there are many reasons behind that, one of which is sitting right here. And for my British friends, happy Trader Day. Cheers. So, what I'd like to do is have my dad explain a little bit about our family history and our family's history in the military. So, Dad, thanks for doing this.
Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, a little bit about our history. All starts with Grandpa. Grandpa Liszczynski, Anthony, who I am named after also, Scott's great grandfather. Uh, Grandpa started out being in the Russian army in Poland when he was still living there. When he immigrated to the United States in the early 1900s, around 1910, 1915, he also enlisted in the U.S. Army, where he's in the infantry. So he served two armies during World War One. And to carry on his tradition, his son, Anthony, or Uncle Tony as we know him, enlisted in the Navy at the age of 18, we think. There is some question as to whether or not he was eligible because Grandpa had to sign for him, and Grandma was very upset that Grandpa signed for him. But Uncle Tony was in the Navy. He was assigned to a naval aircraft in Spokane, Washington, on the Columbia River, and he was in a reconnaissance department. And you ask why we would need reconnaissance in the United States, but when you think about it, the state of Washington is 18 or 19 miles from the northwest tip of Russia. So it made sense that we were on alert anyway as to anything that may have happened, especially during World War II. So one day they were on a reconnaissance mission, actually on a seaplane in the Columbia River, and the plane took off and mysteriously crashed. There were nine members of the Navy on that plane, a pilot, an officer pilot, and eight enlisted men. The pilot parachuted out as the plane was going down, and all of the eight enlisted men perished, including my Uncle Tony, at the age of 18. So I'm very proud of the fact that for a short period he helped defend this United States. From there, we move on to the next generation, which includes my father. Before we talk about Pop, we'll talk about Uncle Bill. Uncle Bill was in the Army as well. He was in the infantry during World War II. Didn't see a lot of military action, but he was in the infantry and served the country very well for the period of time that he was in. My father was in the Navy. My father was on the USS John Penn, which was commissioned out of Roanoke, Virginia. Crossed the equator a couple times, once going south. Then as they went west across the southern portion of South America, they also crossed the equator going north, stopping in New Caledonia. And why New Caledonia? Well, they were on a transport and a supply ship, which picked up troops, both enlisted and officers, as well as supplies, heading toward Guadalcanal. And as they were approaching Guadalcanal and offloading the ship, but the ship was torpedoed by the Japanese. And one thing we did not know, that my father never told us, was why he was alive, believe it or not. The only thing he would tell us was that he lost $200 playing craps the night before the ship was torpedoed. And as he was trying to go down to his locker to collect his $200, the captain handed him his life jacket and says, "You're not going anywhere to get your $200. Just get off of this, you know what, ship, and jump overboard." So the only stories he told us was the fact that he lost $200 playing craps and couldn't retrieve it. What we didn't know, we found this out years later. In fact, it was about 8 or 9, 10 years ago that we found out, actually watching the series Pacific, and the first episode was Guadalcanal. We found out that of the 1,062 enlisted and officers on that ship, 35 survived. And my dad, Ted Grandys, happened to be one of the 35. Never ever talked about it. All we knew is he was out $200, which is down at the bottom of the Pacific right now. next person I want to talk about is my cousin Stan Swickla. He served in the army during the Korean conflict. He was in for the army for about 3 years. Uh, he left the army as a staff sergeant, served the country very well during that short conflict, uh, and then takes us on to my cousin Jerry. Jerry was in the United States Marine Corps. Served the Marine Corps very well. He was active duty in Vietnam, and unfortunately, Jerry was wounded in Vietnam, in Da Nang. Had to be airlifted from Da Nang to Yokota Air Base in Japan, which at the time was about 6 miles from where I was stationed, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But Jerry and I were 6 miles apart, never knew each other. But Jerry survived his wounds in Japan or in Vietnam. Lived a very good life. Did succumb to some of the injuries and the after effects of being in Vietnam, as most Vietnam veterans can attest to. Jerry also had a son, Bill. Bill was in the Marine Corps as well, post Vietnam. Bill was a jet mechanic in the Marines. He also married a Marine, Laura, his wife, who he's still married to. They have several wonderful children, one of which, or I'm sorry, two of which are still enlisted or still in the military. His son, John, is an officer, a second lieutenant in the Army, currently stationed in Poland. His other son is enlisted in the Army, also stationed in Poland. They are there on behalf of the United States because of the conflict now between Ukraine and Russia as a precaution. And I guess that leads it to me. I enlisted in the Air Force in 1966. I spent the first several months in Amarillo, Texas, in tech school and basic training. From there, I was sent to Japan, Tachikawa, Japan, and that puts me back to the story of my cousin Jerry, where he was at Yokota Air Base. I was at Tachikawa Air Base, about 6 miles apart. But we didn't know each other at the time. He ended up marrying my cousin. Spent about 2 years in Japan, and then I was sent to Minot, North Dakota, a SAC Air Base, where I spent the balance of my career in the logistics field, which carried on to my career and private life. So it's a little bit about our family. That's the Grandys, the Leszczynski, and the Shield families, all part of the military.
And then we have Brzezowski.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about my father-in-law, Michael Brzezowski. Mike was in the Army as well, stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, in the accounting department, which is probably good because my father-in-law did not like blood. And if he had to participate in any military activity, any infantry activity, it probably wouldn't have been good for him or the Army. So that's a little bit about our family.
That rounds it all out. Yeah. So I have two things to say after that. I think we got everybody. Yeah.
There's a lot.
That's a lot to remember. So, anyways, two things to say. Number one, thank you for your service, Dad.
Thank you.
Proud of you.
Proud to do it.
And two, happy 4th of July. And as we say in our Polish culture,
Na zdrowie.
Na zdrowie.
Cheers.
Cheers. Peace, be well, and enjoy.